Hey there, bristles. It's really nice out today, so I'm going to crack on with some work that I had intended to do last week, but I had to postpone it because it started lashing rain, and I decided to do the fell bats as a result. So that video is up, enjoy that. And now we're going to look inside this shed and going to take out a project that I started a long time ago, and I need to finish. Well, I want to finish, but I can do that now. So let's have a look. Here it is, a big ass gaming board, which I'm going to take out now, clear all this junk off it. There's like some old figures right here. I think that's a Vect, possibly, or maybe it's just a generic Lloyd, I don't know. Some of this is just junk that my cousin had when we were small, and his mother was throwing it out, and I took it off their hands. So yeah, let's get this out. Probably need to dust it off. I have a feeling it's covered in spiders because this shed there's quite a few big boys in here. But yeah, I'll take it out, clean it off, and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay, so there's a few spiders and webs and some dust because previously, last time I checked on it, the MDF wood on the back actually had mold on the back, so I had to sand that off. That was last year at some stage, so it was covered in some sawdust from that and some webs and some dead spiders, but all in all not a lot. And I think the damage while I was hoovering it, because I dusted with a brush and then hoovered, was kept to a minimum. I don't think I broke anything actually, to be honest. Any kind of detritus or whatever crap is still left on there. I'm just gonna blast it with spray cans now, so it should be okay. So we'll get on to that now in a second. I'm just gonna put the camera somewhere. Oh, but I did notice this bridge that I built, inspired by the game Bloodborne, because I was playing it at the time that I started building this board. I forgot to sculpt some brick detail along the sides here, so I'll have to do that. This brickwork was made by, it was very tedious actually. It's a sheet of plastic card with plastic card bricks cut and stuck on top, and then some texture, and the base of it is lollipop sticks just blocking the light. So this actually sits in here. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so I've got two army painter sprays here. I've got oak brown, there you go, and wolf grey. So just gonna smash this onto there and see how it looks. Oh, and don't forget, for safety, respirator. Okay, so this grey is a lot lighter than I thought it was, but I'm going to commit to it and just darken it down with a load of washes. Hey, so lovely day again. So I'm outside again today, and yesterday I sprayed with the two colours that I showed you, but I also found an old can of Army Painter Uniform Grey in my utility room, and I tried that out because it was a bit closer to the colour that I wanted, but overall the greys just ended up a lot lighter than I wanted. But I'm going to fix that afterwards. I'm going to like do stuff with washes and stuff. So here's how it's looking. As you can see, the first grey was a lot bluer than I expected. Hopefully you can see it. But today I'm just going to be dry brushing. So I've got ultramarine grey for all the grey, and for some little patches of the earth colour I've got carrick stone, and I've got this crappy old brush which will be perfect for the job. Okay, so I'm gonna just throw this camera onto that and do some dry brushing in the sun. To be honest, this brush, the bristles are very rough and very hard. I don't know if this was a good choice to use this brush, because I did keep chipping off a lot of the plaster that was on the model. So just keep that in mind. A softer brush is always better when it comes to dry brushing. I also snapped a few railings and like other plastic bits that were on here too, because I was probably a bit too heavy-handed with this brush. But yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're in ruins, so I'm not going to stress too much. I might fix some of it at a later point. I probably won't. I'm probably just going to throw the bits out because I want to put this behind me and enjoy the board, like for games and stuff eventually. At this point, I've decided to move inside with the board to use my airbrush, and I'm starting off with Nasdrag Yellow, I believe, and heavily water that down. And I'm just going to spray this over the wood. I'm not bothering masking off anything around the wood. If I get a little bit of overspray, I'm not really too concerned. It's just going to be age or whatever discoloration on the brickwork, and I'm not going to stress about it. But I am going to try to avoid it as best I can and just focus on the wood. The next colour I'm going to use through the airbrush is Dark Oath Flesh, and I'm going to use this on parts on the wood as well, mostly on the underside or the area, just to add a bit of variation to parts of it, and in around where it might be in against walls to add some shadow. But I'm mostly using this colour on the earth, but I also use a little bit on the wood. You can see there I'm not too neat. I do spill a few bits of it from the brush, or from the reservoir of the airbrush, and when that happens I actually just blow it around the table with just air from the airbrush, and I ran out of that pretty quickly, or I got very low, and switched to Athonian camo shade on the earth as well. Also, when I say the earth, I'm also including the cliff faces in the background. I can't say I'd fully recommend using contrast paints or any expensive paints on such a large project like this for terrain, because as you can imagine, those paints are quite expensive, but I didn't have anything else on hand, so I just used them. And this one in particular though, if you've seen my videos before, you know how I feel about the new version of Drakenhof Nightshade. I'm not particularly keen on it since they've changed the recipe, so I don't mind using that here, and I'm going to use it on all the stonework. You may have noticed there that I do spill quite a bit of it on the some of the buildings there from the reservoir, and I just blow it around with air from the airbrush. Just kind of messy kind of guy. And now I'm going to take Flesh Terror's Red, and I'm going to use this on the tiles of the little mausoleum things, and I suppose what you could call the steeple of the chapel. That's what one of the intended buildings is a chapel. I also spray this just in a few random patches to give the idea of like the earth is stained with blood. There's also a few areas where there's skeletons, and I've chosen just to spray the cloth and the shields for them with Flesh Terror's Red, and also where there's roses on the railings and fences of the mausoleum. There's also bits of the building and the woodwork that I give a little spray with this, just to show kind of like staining from blood splatter. And there's 2 buildings which are, the bottom floors of them are enclosed with the metal grating. In my mind, the upper floors of one of them anyway is the night quarters for the guards of this particular area, and the barracks. And then the bottom floors is the actual holding cells for the prisoners, because in my mind, this chapel is the main ruined part with the steeple. The chapel is actually, this chapel was established by a Sigmarite priest and a witch hunter who came and did Sigmar's good work, hunting the locals to root out any kind of witchcraft or devilry. So they would hold suspected individuals in the holding cells until it was time for interrogation, and that's what the gibbet, I believe it is called, the hanging cage, that's what that's for. That's sometimes they would just leave them out in the chill elements high up to wear them down a little bit perhaps. But anyway, yeah, so the holding cells, I sprayed a lot of that red contrast in there too, because later when this was overrun by chaos, the Khorne Bloodbound took over, and instead the holding cells were for captives, probably dinner, considering the cannibalistic nature of Khorne. Could also have been to where they kept their flesh hounds while not at battle, or perhaps they were fighting pits where maybe the gore chosen for sport would throw in some blood reavers of the lower ranks to fight to the death for their entertainment and the entertainment of their mighty Lord of Khorne, but above all for the glory of Khorne. Skulls for the Skull Throne. Anyway, moving on, this is a nice soft dry brush here this time, and using Ulthuan Grey for all the stonework and Rakarth Flesh for all the woodwork, being very light with the Rakarth Flesh and focusing it more toward the edges where it would become a lot more weathered with time. If you've seen aged wood, a lot of the time it tends to go very pale looking. And it was about that time my youngest came home from school, so I decided to call it a day. We shall reconvene tomorrow or another day. Okay, so it's another lovely day again this week. It is a different week. So I'm going to be painting outside again today, but I'm just going to do this bit inside because there's construction going on behind my house, and I realised in the last clips that I took last week that there was a lot of birds squawking, which I apologise for. So yeah, I'll just do this mouth bit in here and gonna head outside now. Also my neighbours are at the back and they're talking, so yeah, I'll be cutting out that. So, and I just feel kind of awkward because they're all like regular folk. They don't, well, I mean, I don't know what they do behind closed doors, but I know they're probably not painting Warhammer like us. People with class. Yep. Anyway, hush Momo, I'll let you out now. Okay. So yeah, I'll head out now. And now we shall move on to the metal. And I'm starting off with thrash metal. Just gonna use that on all the metals. I'm not going for full coverage here, just dry brushing. Like all the work we've done before is going to have coloured this metal anyway with some kind of layer, and it will be, I am going to dirty it down with some rust because these are run down, they haven't been looked after, they're out in the elements. So just dry brushing thrash metal on there. It's more of an overbrush than a dry brush, to be honest, because I'm just not looking for full couvrage. Never mind, it's way too hot outside for me right now. Back inside. I apologise, my camera died when I was recording the last bit, so I'll just run through it now. It's nothing like crazy complicated or anything. So what you last saw was I used thrash metal. See that? Thrash metal. I didn't give it a proper coat over all the metals. I just gave it a dry brush because I'm not wasting time making sure it's all perfect. What else did I do? Then I highlighted that with a, excuse me, camera full of beard, a dry brush with speed metal. So just, if you're doing it at home with whatever paints you have, a dark metal and a light metal. It doesn't really matter. I'm just using what I have on hand. Over that then I watered down some, oh no, where's it gone? Don't panic. Just a second. I have it here somewhere. You know what, just maybe I left it in the kitchen somewhere. Yep, I did. Okay, so dark metal, light metal dry brush, then heavily watered down some Mörk brown. Can you see that? Yeah, Mörk brown, and gave that just used that as a big wash over all the metals. I'll show you that now. As you can see, nothing fancy, just a quick metal, rusty metal. The Mörk brown is effective enough to just look like aged, weathered metals, and I'm happy with that. Okay, and then the only other kind of metal that I chose to focus on was the bell, which for that I used a base coat of decayed metal. So tin bits is my only reference for a Games Workshop alternative. I don't know if they still use tin bits or if it's something else, like something with a Skaven name. And then over that I dry brushed with Victorian brass, which is this kind of color. But yeah, Victorian brass. And then I did a mixture of Victorian brass and speed metal blended together, or mixed together, and use that as a smaller dry brush. And then on top of that, some watered down Nylic oxide. So here's the bell. Speaking of which, if you like my content, it would be very helpful, great support if you would hit the bell for notifications and like and subscribe. So now that you're caught up on that, what's left that I want to do? To be honest, the only thing that there are a few metal bits where I haven't gotten around to doing the Mörk brown on. I will do that, but right now I'm going to paint all the bone, and to do that I'm going to, there's some skeletons and some skulls around here, so I'm going to use Zandri dust as a base. I've run out of Agrax Earthshade, so I'm just going to use Dark Oath Flesh because I do not own any skeleton horde. So Zandri dust, Dark Oath Flesh, and then a dry brush of Pale Sand from Vallejo model color. I'll just set up the camera now to film some of that, but that's as simple as it's going to be, I think. I will update if I choose to do anything a bit more complex. I'm hoping to get this knocked out, finished in the next 30 minutes or so, because taking it in and out of my shed, every time I do, I damage this board. It looks cool. And damage is, I mean, whatever. I'll hide it with something in the future. Maybe some kind of effect like snow or a ton of moss and grass. We'll see. And here we have painting the bone. I initially intended on doing full coverage with the paint, but in fact I'd actually done a lot of work inadvertently with overspray, and I decided to just brush it on, and I'm not trying to get it into the recesses, just kind of an overbrush. Just make sure there's a layer on the parts that are visible, and I'm not going to try and get into areas that won't be seen because realistically they're in shadow, so I'm not bothering. I do make a bit of a mess going over these in later stages, the caged skeletons here, but I just tidy up the metals afterwards. And let's not forget the poor defenders who are buried, and the bios up there watching the bell. So as I said, sandry dust, an overbrush, make sure there's a good layer, but avoid the recesses, and then I decide to smother them all to bone with dark oath flesh and dab it off just to make sure to get those, make sure all the recesses are dark, in case some of the ones that I avoided before weren't, or in case I went a bit too heavy with the sandry dust. So dark oath flesh and dab off the excess on the top just to make sure that we have some nice shading. And then on top of that, make sure it's all dry. I used a hairdryer just to help things on a little bit, and then dry brush with pale sand. This was my first time using pale sand, and I really liked it, so much so that I got a little bit of overbrush around on the stone beside the skulls, and decided to just overbrush all the brickwork anyway because I liked how it looked. I actually also overbrushed on the flowers and the roses and the leaves that were growing on any of the pieces of terrain that came from the Garden of Moor / Sigmarite Mausoleum, just to give them a bit of a highlight up. However, I went over the roses with Flesh Terrors Red. It's just really vibrant, and using that under shading to just colour it, because I don't want to go around and highlight all these little flowers. They're lovely details and I'm really glad they're there, but I don't have time to do that. And for the leaves I used Contrast Orc Flesh. And actually, I forgot to mention, I also used I can't remember if it was the dry brush of Ulthuan Grey or Pale Sand, but I also did that on the tiles just to make them look a little older and faded and desaturated over time. They've lost that vibrancy. And here I'm just gonna show you a pass over of how it's looking. I also used the Flesh Terrors Red to go over the fabric and shield, the wood on the shields of any of the corpses, skeletons that are scattered around, because I may have gone over those a little bit when I was dry brushing their armour and the bone. And while I had it on the brush, I just put some splattered around close to where there was already some sprayed on with the airbrush for some blood splatter. I don't know if I mentioned earlier in the video, the grass that I put down at one point. I think I did that bit when my camera died that day, and I was really feeling it and really enjoying working on it, so I kept going. The grass is actually, I believe it's from Army Painter, and I'm gonna look it up now. So after looking it up, yes, it is Army Painter, and I believe it's steppe grass, or steppe grass, spelled S-T-E-P-P-E. The reason I can't remember what it's called is because I was pressing the lid onto it and I put a bit too much weight on it, and I put my hand through the tub and smashed it, just putting the lid on by accident. And luckily I had an empty tub from Games Workshop grass, and I just poured it into that. But yeah, that's why I had to look up the name of the grass, because I couldn't remember. It's the Army Painter steppe grass. That was applied, I just in sections, so that I could kind of control the mess I was making a little bit and save as much of the over sprinkle, or whatever you like to call it, of the grass. I save as much of that as I possibly could. I did it in sections. I just painted some PVA glue on with a brush, craft glue, and sprinkled it on. I don't have a fancy one of those things, I can't remember what it's called, grass applicator with the electric current and whatnot. Just sprinkle it on, it looks fine, and just blow on it gently. And here's all the beauty shots. I'm really happy with this. I I'm actually seeing now bits where I missed putting some rust on the metal bits on the mausoleum roofs. I'll do that at some stage. I'm just not going to go back and do it right now. I also need to get some cheaper black colour paint to paint around the rim. And I would like to do a little backdrop image to put between the cliff faces at the back. Like maybe ones that I can swap out. One for like a daytime, one for a nighttime kind of spooky scene for playing with undead. Or maybe, I don't know, one that one for each realm, to represent each realm. Like, I can't wait to play some skirmish games on this. Throughout the project, it's been affectionately known by myself as MorgueHeim, because Mordheim and Morg, undead. I like undead factions. But yeah, it could be used for any skirmish game, really. If I put some snow on it, it might also be usable for frostgrave. I intend on using it for Warcry and Mordheim. I've never played Mordheim, but I'd love to. What I would like to see would simply be a facsimile edition of the original rulebook with all the town criers and supplements they released in White Dwarf added into it in like a nicely presented hardback, like the Realm of Chaos books that they reprinted a couple of years ago. I would love that. I would buy that, because I've been trying to get the Mordheim rulebook for years, and I just can't afford the prices, or I can't justify the prices that I see online for it secondhand. But yeah, that would be what I would do if I was Games Workshop, because I mean, that book would sell in buckets, and I think it would be a great way to, of course I know the rules are free online, but some people like to have the physical copy, and that would be a nice accessible way for new people to get into an existing game without having to relaunch it. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you see something useful in it, you get something out of it and enjoy. You will have seen some miniatures in some of these end shots here. I just wanted to show some scale, so I threw in some miniatures from some of my favorite factions that I currently own and have actually painted, that aren't in my backlog sitting sadly waiting to be painted. Would have been nice if the bases matched the board so as not to break the immersion, but well, just to give an idea of scale and how this might look in a game. I'd love to get some kind of, not smoke machine, but like a fake kind of mist machine. That would be really nice. That wouldn't like, actually I should varnish this so that it can't get damaged by moisture or anything like that, but that would be awesome for ambiance and some nice thematic lights. This board is 4 foot by 4 foot. Tis feckin' heavy too. It's large enough to play some Age of Sigmar Spearhead, but it might be a bit too cramped with terrain. I'm not sure. Well, that's it for this video. Like, comment, subscribe. I have a Patreon now. Not currently offering anything extra on it. I am working on stuff to add to it in the future, but for now I'm just trying to get my videos out, and I don't want to put them on Patreon. I don't want to put them behind a paywall ever, because I don't want to do that. But anyway, look after yourselves, take care of each other, have a great week, and hopefully I'll see you all again, or you'll see me really soon.